I really had this revelation of like, I deserve time off. Like I deserve to relax because, I worked so hard to pay the team. I worked so hard to kind of build up this infrastructure, and I checked out. And what happened is when I returned back to the business in September, things had stopped. My pipeline was completely dried up. All of my, like, the marketing train had completely stopped. Everything was very disorganized. Everything felt very unwieldy. And it was a real painful 6 months or so after that, coming back from that sort of disconnection to really build up momentum again. I had to make a lot of investments to sort of speed things along. And it was extremely painful and a really difficult time in my business. Let's be honest. Vacation sounds great until you're relaxing on the beach, bombarded by Slack pings and questions from your team. So if stepping away from your business this summer sounds like it's impossible, then this episode is for you, because today we are talking about the Scalable Summer Playbook. How are we going to set our business up for success so we can actually enjoy time away to relax, unwind, reconnect with the people that we love the most? So I'm going to take you behind the scenes of how I have developed a fail-proof system in my own business and how I've helped dozens of other founders that I work with through my Scalable Marketing Machine Accelerator and my private fractional CMO work. How do we set up our businesses for success while we're not there? This is where systems are our friends. So today we're diving all into it. So if you don't know, or you haven't sort of been listening to the podcast for a while, this is something that I talk about quite often, which is my summers in Spain. So my husband is from Barcelona, but we spend our summers in Western Spain, in the northwestern province of Galicia, which is above Portugal. It's so beautiful. It's such a great break from the Miami heat, because Miami in the summer is just intolerable. And we've been going to Spain for over 10 years, every single summer, at least 6 weeks that we are away. And I would have to say for the first 6 or 7 of those years, I can remember so clearly just bombarded by work. Like, so, sitting in a different setting, so beautiful. Actually, the apartment that we are at in Galicia is up very high. We have beautiful vistas of views of the mountains. But, I had spent most of the vacation time, stuck inside, very afraid to take any days off. And as a business owner, it is a tough decision to completely clear your calendar, get out of that mentality. If you're not working, things are not happening in your business. Another layer of this, which was just ridiculous, was that this small town that we stay in, especially it's gotten a little bit better, but, up to just a couple of years ago, Wi-Fi was not readily available. So I have such clear memories of sitting outside of like a cousin's house who had really good Wi-Fi connection literally on a bench because they weren't at home, to steal their Wi-Fi out on the street, like trying to connect to a team call. Absolutely ridiculous. But in these past the last 3-4 years, I've been able to completely do a 360 and actually feel incredible amounts of spaciousness during my summer holiday, get to spend long, lazy days at the beach with my family, long, lazy lunches, working to the partying to the wee hours of the evening, because in Spain we eat dinner like at 10 o'clock. And these are the things that I missed out a lot because of the time difference. I was always working sort of in the evening time into the late hours when it was really like when everything really comes to life. So the first thing, in my own journey, so I'll talk really about what has personally worked for me, because I feel so grateful that I'm able to be fully present, to feel incredibly organized. Like, I'm recording this in June and I'm looking at, my schedule for the next couple months, and I have all of the most important strategic things that I have to do are where they need to be. My days are fully optimized in terms of, my theme days and being able to get into flow. I've controlled my calendar very much. So I know that I'm not going to lose momentum. Everything that has to happen has happened. And we also have a lot of things on the back end that are working incredibly well. Things are incredibly systemized. So I'm able to not only go to Spain, but we're going to be traveling, we're going to be hiking and camping, we're going to be completely disconnected in the wilderness for a couple days. We're going to go to a spa, we're going to do all sorts of things. And I'm really excited, but I'm not going into it with fear that things are going to slow down or I'm going to lose momentum. So, how can you implement this into your own business? So I feel like the real problem underneath everything, if you're saying stepping away from my business doesn't seem like a reality, right? And listen, I'm going to preface this by saying, before I kind of got my scalable summer playbook in place, I did step away from my business and kind of checked out because I was burnt out, to be honest, and was really in this space a couple of years ago where it's like I work nonstop, as a mom, as a business owner, there's no days off really, right? It's like if you're stepping away from your business, it's usually because like the kids need something or the kids are sick, and it's just like this nonstop. And I remember a couple of years ago, I really had this revelation of like, I deserve time off. Like I deserve to relax because, I worked so hard to pay the team. I worked so hard to kind of build up this infrastructure, and I checked out. And what happened is when I returned back to the business in September, things had stopped. My pipeline was completely dried up. All of my the marketing train had completely stopped. Everything was very disorganized. Everything felt very unwieldy, and it was a real painful 6 months or so after that, coming back from that sort of disconnection to really build up momentum again. I had to make a lot of investments to sort of speed things along. And it was extremely painful and a really difficult time in my business. And I vowed that I would never be in that position ever again. And so that's when I started to really focus my attention on digging underneath, like what is the real problem? Now, I understood the importance of systems. Like I've built my whole service business around implementing system inside other people's businesses. But there was a bit of a mindset shift in your own business. And for me, this is what I faced, which was understanding that even if I have all the systems in place, even if I have the support team available, that there's always going to be a real problem if I, as the CEO and founder, leader of the company, was still too central of a figure in the business. And I think a lot of founders struggle with this, right? I think we can make our SOPs and we can put them into some Google Drive and never look at them again. It's quite a different experience if you actually activate those SOPs, that you hold people accountable for them, and that you are trusting your team enough and the systems enough to relinquish control, right? So the real problem here is even if you have things in place, it's really being able to lead in a way that activates all of these things. And for me, it was not a very natural, it wasn't natural. It wasn't really easy for me to see that as being the problem, right? Because there is a really high cost of founder dependency, right, on the business. And we hear this terminology like, okay, don't work in the business, work on the business. But if you had to step back and take stock, do you really believe that your team can work autonomously? Like 100%, if you left for 1 month or 3 months, could all of the things that had to happen happen? Right? And so where I really hit a wall, I think, with all of this, which may make this a little bit clearer to you, is that, I'm very good in the rhythms. It's one of the things I think is an area of my expertise of how to sort of implement this cadence and this rhythm with the team, right? So we have our quarterly review and planning. It's very systematically sort of activated through our scope of works, which we manage in a project management tool. We have our weekly meetings that are very structured. My one-on-ones, my reviews with my team, everything is very structured. But one thing that I realized was that I alone was driving all of that. So yes, it's great to have that structure, right? But if I wasn't the captain of the ship, actually pointing everyone in the direction, and in some moments felt like kind of tugging everyone behind me, that things didn't necessarily happen. And what I realized was in doing that, I didn't give my team the power. I didn't give my team the confidence to actually run these systems on their own, because they were relying on me too much. And so that was really a point of inflection for me in my business, and where I could say, like last year, being on the beach and receiving a notification of like, hey, this problem is arising in the business, but don't worry, we've already done X, Y, Z, L, and P. There's no action for you to take. We're just making you aware. That was a huge moment for me, because I ended last summer. I remember sending like a really beautiful note to my head of operations saying like, I feel so taken care of because you've been able to step in and make sure that all of these top processes are running smoothly, that everything is still working and churning. So the first step in all of this, the first part in all of this, is really taking stock of how are you a central piece of the business function, right? And this can be a little bit, it can be a little bit sneaky, because again, you could have all of these things in place, but the question is, have you taken yourself out enough and given power to the people in your team? And have you built their confidence enough to kind of run it on their own without them second guessing themselves, right? Can they actually build and ship something, whether it be like a blog post or social media post or email sequence or even run a campaign, without you having to have so much of your hands getting dirty to make that happen? So we really want to understand, what is the real problem underlying in all this. Now, the real problem could be that you just actually don't have those systems written down, right? Or you haven't built any of that structure into the operations in your business. And if that's you, that's something to look at. But we want to understand, what problem are we trying to solve as we are trying to mount this more autonomous business? Because one thing that I've been pondering a lot, especially in the past couple of years, is like, when I've built a business that takes so much of my personal time, it really does feel like I've just created another job for myself instead of building a business, right? And I think especially, women, we have this mentality maybe a little bit more than men, as I've seen, which is like, we feel like our blood, sweat, and tears is equivalent to sort of the value that we bring to the world. And that mentality, I believe, is what definitely kept me small. It kept me in a very small way of thinking, where now in these past couple of years and being able to see what's possible, it's like, hey, if I can step away for 6 weeks from my business and still have the momentum going and still have things flowing and revenue coming in, and opportunities coming in, what would it look like to leave for 6 months? What would it look like to actually not physically work in my business at all? And we know that it's possible, because we see entrepreneurs out there in the world that have multiple businesses. They're absolutely not answering Slack pings every day, right? And I've worked hand in hand with some of these founders that have multiple successful businesses. They've learned to build the machine and empower the people to run that machine. And they're just the, you are the kind of guiding North Star, the main spark of inspiration or the main spark of motivation, from which everything springs from, or everything kind of, falls from. But the day-to-day does not have to be with your own hands. So the second part of this is like, okay, so first part is kind of uncovering what is the real problem, right? But the second part is, let's kind of do a little bit of a stress test of where your business is now, right? If you do decide, right, to take like a break from your business without sort of putting any of these things in place that we're going to discuss today, it really becomes kind of like a stress test for your business, right? You can actually use this time. If you're like, I have no idea where I stand, I think things are really good, I'm not, it would be helpful to say, can I step away for 3-4 days and just see what unfolds? It's going to be a real good diagnostic tool for you. Because we want to understand where did things break down when you're not available? And some of the things that I can foresee, or some things that I've experienced, is like, okay, approvals, right? If approvals is a place where things break down, like you're a bottleneck because your team needs approval from you in order to ship things out, right? In order to post or schedule or whatever. That's a place where a system could be very useful, right? And we can batch things, we can systemize things, we can do them in advance, right? That's a fix for that. Another area is about sort of escalations of issues for customer service, right? Again, if there's a problem with a client, do you have anyone else, or a customer, do you have anyone else on your team that could handle that appropriately? If not, that is another area that you can absolutely put a system into place, right? And, in the customer service theme, a lot of times this could look like empowering your team to be able to make some monetary decisions, right? One of the things, this happened to me the other day that was like so frustrating. I was at this like little boutique, and I was going to buy this like very overpriced baseball cap as a gift. And there were like 2 different types of caps, and they were 2 different prices. And anyway, one was more expensive, the other one was less expensive. And it was so clear that the cap that I wanted was like the less expensive option, which was still like very overpriced, but it wasn't very clear, and everyone was confused and this, that, and the other. And so I went to the manager and I was like, oh, hey, could you just these 2 caps, the more expensive one is this one here that clearly has different features. It's clearly more like an upgraded, souped up version, whereas this one is the more plain version. Can't you just give me this one for the lower price? And they were confused. They couldn't figure it out in their computer. And I was like, you know what? Forget about it. I don't need it that bad. And I left. But let me tell you, it was such a missed opportunity for them. It just, for me as a business owner, I was like, that's just such a no-brainer. For the couple bucks less money of this, cheaper option, it's way more worthwhile to just let the customer buy the thing, right? But it wasn't clear to them. And in my opinion, that was just a miscommunication, because whomever is the owner and understanding what their margins are to a boutique, who, like, all boutiques need, more sales, it just seemed like a no-brainer. Like, make the customer happy. Maybe I would have bought like 3 other things at the same time, instead of making this whole situation where they're on the computer for like 10 minutes and they don't understand, and they're kind of like, I don't know, they don't have the power to give a discount or to do, right? This is an example of things not functioning properly. But you giving some clear set of instructions to your team on, what you can and can't offer. When you say, let's do everything to make it right, what does that actually mean? So here's an examples of, if there's some points of stress or some breaking points in your business where you could run into some issues, again, stepping away for a couple days and kind of testing it out will reveal very easily. But there is a lot that you can kind of think of just brainstorming on your own. And these are the areas where you can absolutely put some systems in place. So I'm giving you all these ideas to start thinking in a way of, there's plenty of businesses that exist that don't need the owner's physical hands doing everything. Like, I think we understand that intellectually. And the way to actually get there is by setting clear expectations and guidelines and empowering your team and understanding that they're not going to get it 100% right all the time. And that's okay, right? It's better to be in a situation where you've empowered their team, they've done the best that they can, and maybe you lose some money, for example, rather than things just stopping, like completely halting, and someone trying to track you down in the middle of a family vacation in the Swiss Alps where you have limited Wi-Fi. You could lose like half a day of just full of stress and anxiety in a moment where you could be having a beautiful, making beautiful memories with people that you love, because your team simply they weren't empowered enough to just like handle it themselves. So we want to be in a situation where our teams can handle it themselves, and in situations where they cannot, that we've planned ahead, right? To be able to foresee the couple things that may really need your attention, right? So I've created what I call a pre-vacation checklist to kind of help you understand some of these areas that you could be brainstorming, where these kind of stop gaps might be, so you can plan ahead, right? And this is what I call the Scalable Marketing Machine Framework for this summer. So I have a little bit of a checklist here. So first is sort of looking at, so the Scalable Marketing Machine has 4 core pillars, right? And these are the most important themes, I believe, for building a strong, sound foundation for your marketing department. Okay, so we're going to kind of focus specifically on the marketing department, but you can take some of these themes that we talk about and apply them to like different areas of your business. But because marketing is usually the most intense part of your business anyway, I think that this actually applies to your whole business. So let's look at brand communication. So is your brand messaging clear enough that your team can post, reply, and engage without you? This is huge because many founders that I know struggle a lot with content creation, right? Having to approve the content not being perfect, things might go out with typos, right? Especially if you have like foreign folks working to create content for you. Now, it's much better nowadays with AI, but there are still, I think, there's still like a level of oversight that a lot of founders get caught in, making sure that things are on brand, that they sound natural, that they sound authentic, X, Y, and Z. And then also being able to have your team autonomously kind of engaging without having to approve what they say or sort of interject with what they're doing. And this is a very easy fix by creating some brand standards that you could feed into your chatbot, right? So if you haven't done this already, I think probably most people have already been hip to this, which is like, let's upload a brand guidelines booklet with examples, with social post examples, with blog examples, with our best graphics examples. You can train AI to really understand all of that and make sure that whatever is being spit out of AI is very in line with your authentic brand. And a really great system that I've used with multiple founders, and these are the founders that have multiple businesses that are incredibly busy, is to get into a cadence with your team with content creation where you do like a monthly review, where the content goes out without you having to even look at it or review it, right? But then once a month, you come together for like a review and you look at everything that's gone out, right? Now, this is assuming like that bot or that individual is trained in the brand, they're, okay, the first couple days we're training them, but most importantly, it's like you want them to work autonomously and then have one point, maybe once a month, where you look at all of the posts that have gone out, you've looked at kind of blogs, content, email, and you yourself, as the head of marketing or the founder or whatever, the main creative of the business, can look and kind of spot check everything and make sure that it is up to standards. And part of this process is relinquishing that need for perfection, relinquishing the control, and being able to give at one point in time, like a synthesized, thoughtful reflection on the quality of content, of marketing, deliverables that are going out, and have a constructive conversation, rather than what most people do is like ad hoc, kind of like every week approving posts or approving things that are going out, reading things quickly or not reading them and approving them. This is where sort of a organized monthly interaction is really useful. And then when you have all that dialed in, you can pre-schedule content for the entire quarter, right? If you want. If you build up a bank, like a library of posts and content to repurpose, this is a great example of stuff that you can use while you are away. You know that nothing's going on that you haven't discussed or looked at or reviewed or even brainstormed on, because you have this bank of already used content that you can repurpose. And to be quite honest, like, repurposed content works really great on all platforms. And I think for all of our businesses, we have such a huge bank of content to pull from. Like, I bet you we don't ever have to create any net new content, right? Because we just have this huge, bank of content that again, repurposed content works very well. I know a lot of top creators that recycle content a lot, and those posts and pieces of content tend to get better and better and better results, like the more that they are posted, right? Now, obviously, you leave like an appropriate amount of time in between them, but repurposed content works. So that's on the brand communication side, and this is a piece where I think practically a lot of us get stuck, because we need to make sure that the content train, so to speak, that content is always flowing, that we're always staying in front of people, into people's feeds, into people's inboxes, staying relevant in the market, even during the slower summer months, even during vacation time and holiday time. We want to show up, because consistency is an extremely important value when it comes to sales and marketing, right? Showing up consistently builds trust with our prospects, and we want that, right? We want them to know that we're showing up, we're putting in the work, we have our shit together, our systems in together to be able to be constantly showing up. It says a lot. So the second part of the Scalable Marketing Machine framework, which we're going to kind of look at in the lens of our summer break here, is really looking at the marketing growth strategy. So I teach inside of my accelerator, and when I work with clients, I implement this, our team implements this, which is building out the 24/7 marketing flywheel, which is how we conceptualize a marketing strategy, right? And these are the 6 stages that every prospect goes through, from first knowing about you and your business all the way to sort of being ready to buy, converting, and then eventually becoming raving fans. It's essentially this client journey that we need to map out consciously in order to make sure that we are sending people on the right journey, right? And we're kind of helping guide how they think and interact with our brand. So one of the problems that can occur while you're sort of switching off your brain and stepping away from the business is that if you're not physically pushing and constantly getting yourself out there, networking, showing up with, building partnerships, showing up in communities, if you're not physically doing those things, then your pipeline dries up. And if that's something that you're afraid of, and this is the problem that I had many years ago, why I came back in September after my break, or I should call it more like a breakdown, where I just said, F it, and like, let me enjoy my summer. My breakdown was because if I'm not showing up, if I wasn't showing up networking and physically being there, that my pipeline dried up and people just simply like don't think of you and they don't remember you, right? And my main problem was that in my 24/7 marketing flywheel, there were a very strategic piece that was just the weakest link. And that was my awareness phase, right? I didn't have a automated, repeatable system for getting leads into my client journey, into my 24/7 marketing flywheel without me physically pushing it. And so for you, this could look different, right? In these 6 stages, it could look like, hey, we get leads coming in, but they're actually not converting. Or actually, we're getting people onto sales calls, but that sales call is not converting. Or we've got too many people churning. Building out your marketing growth strategy within the framework of the 24/7 marketing flywheel is so brilliant because with that flywheel, you can measure, your marketing scorecard really reflects those 6 stages. And when you're reviewing your scorecard and the data, you can see where is the weakest link, where's the breakdown in this flywheel, what's the weakest part of it. And that's really where you can focus your time, energy, and attention. But it's really important to kind of have a handle on what that flywheel looks like before you step away from your business, because that's usually the point where you're probably leaking leads or missing opportunities. And so how did I fix this in my own business? Well, I realized that I needed a repeatable system for sales without me having to push. And in marketing world, that means, one of 2 things essentially is that you have either ads that are running while you're not around to physically be networking and building those relationships and getting in front of new audiences, or doing a cold outbound email program. Those are 2 things that will be working while you sleep. And I think it's really powerful for business owners to understand that investing in one of those 2 strategies is going to set you up for consistent success, because you're getting in front of those opportunities. And a lot of us, as maybe more service-based business owners, maybe we're not so acclimated to selling cold audiences via ads or via cold email, but it's one thing that you could learn to do, right? You can put systems in place that help to improve conversion rate for cold audience. You could put some nurture systems in place that help to get that cold audience lead, that cold lead, more acclimated to what your business is and how you can help them. So really taking stock in your marketing growth system, or AKA your 24/7 marketing flywheel, is going to help you identify where there may be some loose pieces in your overall pipeline. And you can put in some tactics, right, and get those rolling, and kind of get those ironed out before you take time away to ensure that there's no piece missing in this process. So even while you're gone, you can be getting leads in and kind of putting them through essentially your marketing and sales funnel, so you can be always churning opportunities, even when you're away, even when you're sleeping, right? So this could look like, putting again, we mentioned ads and cold outbound, but this also could look at, putting your email campaigns or, your specific sequences on autopilot, and having your team really checking in on leads and helping them to either secure time in your calendar if you're primarily doing sales, or have, your sales team taking over and converting. But this is where we begin to look at, okay, how are things really functioning in terms of leads and sales in our business while we're away? Now, this may be aspirational for many of us that have smaller businesses, but it's something that is absolutely possible, right? You can basically be building a sales team, getting more revenue and sales into your business without you even meeting those people or even knowing about them. That's where we really want to get to as we're scaling and growing our business. So that's the second part, marketing growth strategy. The third piece of the Scalable Marketing Machine Framework, and looking at our summer playbook, is our team. So really taking a minute to understand who owns what while you're out, right? what are, again, escalation points? If there's any issue, who's responsible for what when you're not there, right? Also, what rights does your team have to rectify certain situations without you needing to be giving final approval? One of the founders that I've worked with that was wildly successful, had 6 exits, and he was running several successful businesses. But one of the things I loved was that he always for the team. Now, depending on the level, he put like a threshold, a money number threshold, which is, for the lower level, folks that were just executors, like up to $200 that they could spend without needing approval by anyone. And the leadership team, we could spend, I want to say, between $500 and up to $1,000 on fixing a problem, getting a software if needed, whatever, without it needing all of the formal approval. And I loved that because that really empowered the team to just like do what needed to get done. And oftentimes things stop because it was like, oh, hey, this couldn't connect with this because we need the paid version of Zapier and it was $29.99 and I didn't know if this stuff just like slows everyone down. So how can we put a reasonable dollar amount or threshold, give to our team where it's like, hey, up until this amount, you don't even have to let me know. I just trust that you're going to make the right decision. This is such a clear way that we can just give that power to our team and really empower them to just solve problems without getting us involved. So I loved that strategy. And the last piece of the Scalable Marketing Machine is leadership, right? So who's going to be leading in your absence? And how do we prepare them with vision? How do we make them confident, right? And we want to be able to set expectations, right? And make sure that our systems are in place before we hand it over to someone to take over. So this is what I talked about before, and this is all that I teach and implement for clients. It's something that I'm so passionate about. But this leadership cadence that I spoke of before, this is how we get our business to run on autopilot, meaning everyone is very clear on when they have to show up for meetings, what the meeting's going to look like, what are the goals, what are they working on, what are their KPIs. These are the basic things that we all need present in our business, and we need them to be running over and over and over and over again. So our team feels really comfortable knowing, again, the expectations. And once those expectations are in place, having one figurehead to kind of take over as the main leader and preparing them to be that point of contact while you're away is priceless. And oftentimes when I step away from my business now, that main person, my head of operations, is really is the one point of contact I have with the business. And I will check in with her once every couple of days, to be honest. Maybe it's one every 2 or 3 days just to check in to make sure things are okay. But I'm not constantly talking to her, right? Because I know that she's going to be, Monday at the running the morning meeting. I know what the morning meeting is going to look like. I can check in with the Google Doc to see what any of the updates are. I can check our project management system if I want to. And frankly, I don't want to because I'm going to be on vacation, relaxing, right? So the last piece I want to talk about that I think could be kind of fun is what do you do while you're away, right? What are sort of the ways that you can really make sure that you relax and make it like productive vacation, meaning that you really feel connected with your family or the ones that you love, that you really feel rejuvenated and you get actually the most out of this time away. So the first thing is what I just mentioned is like put some digital guardrails up. So I check in once every 2 or 3 days. We use WhatsApp to communicate and we will send like a message. I don't even go into Slack because to me that's very overwhelming, and Slack has a lot of tactical like execution conversations going on. And oftentimes it's not like the best use of my time to like wade through all of those because the team takes care of that. But I have a check-in every 2 or 3 days. It's very casual. And then during my 6 to 8 weeks that I'm gone, we will have my head of operations and I probably 2 or 3 meeting check-in points during that time, just to make sure that there's no roadblocks. And that is usually about 30 minutes. But I'm able to manage this whole business over about 6 weeks of just really with those systems, because I know that the rest of the team are rolling in our regular meeting cadence and doing all of the regular things. We had done our quarterly review and planning, before vacation, so they're very clear on the 90 days what our plan is and what the KPIs are and what the expectations are. Everything is in motion. All I need to do is be updated once in a while and really told if there's any roadblocks, but that's done in an organized way. It's just not ad hoc when things happen. And I think one of the biggest mindset shifts for the team is really understanding, like, don't be throwing your stress and anxiety or whatever onto me while I'm on vacation, right? And in fact, no situation should be full of anxiety or stress, because we have a plan to address anything that might come up, right? And yes, things will come outside of what your plan is. Things unexpected happen. But for the most part, right, those are the outliers, right? If something completely random happens, like, I don't know, someone's house burns down, that's another issue. But for the most part, we can preemptively plan for any situations that might come up by taking stock and where those breaking points might be. So putting those guardrails up. How often are you going to check in? When are you going to check in? Who are you going to check in with, right? And then what you could be doing that's going to be most reflective to get the most out of your time while you're gone is use this for really like creative ideation, right? Many of us as CEOs, as business owners, like, we don't really stop. We don't really shut off. And so what I do is I carry with me all the time my journal. My journal is always with me when I'm on vacation, or my notes app in my phone. And I'm constantly creating ideas for posts, ideas for a book that I'm writing, ideas for strategic partnerships, ideas for campaigns and promotions. And I have a place that all of that will be stored. And at the end of vacation, I'm able to do kind of a download of all of that and weed through like what's good, what's not good, and have captured all of those great things. The other thing that I like to do is really reflect on business performance. So if I am going to look and dip a toe into my business while I'm on vacation, I'm mostly looking at the data. I'm mostly looking into reports, into data, at my scorecard, at my P&L, and really thinking about how can I be more efficient monetarily. I love doing like software detox, like thinking about those things. Thinking about how I can structure team differently, how I can kind of structure pay packages differently. That's kind of where my mind's always spinning, is like, how can I become more efficient? That's the kind of strategy that I'm thinking about while I'm away. Let's see, anything else that I wrote down some notes. But basically, I think the other thing to focus on, or the most important thing to focus on, is just to be present. Like, really to be present, put the phone away. I love just leaving the phone at home when I'm on vacation. I love being in a place where there's a significant time difference. That is a joy for me because, I love when we're in Spain, the morning hours, like there's no emails coming in. I know nothing is happening for like the first half of the day because it's too early. And so that enables me to really leave the phone away. But if the phone is sort of away for the morning, it's usually pretty easy to just kind of like not even check in for the rest of the day and really feel disconnected. So here is your action plan. So kind of synthesizing everything we talked about. How do we make this really actionable? So what I would love for you to do in the next couple days after listening to this episode is really identify one key marketing task that you can delegate or automate before you go on vacation, right? Is there some piece of your marketing effort that is just still too manual? And figure out a way to systemize it. And honestly, that many systems can be built very quickly with our help of AI. And it's something that, could take like a couple hours of investment to kind of get things more automated, but it will pay you tenfold in the future. The next thing to do is to host kind of like a quick 15 or 30-minute check-in with your team that's going to be titled, What Happens While I'm Gone? And you're going to go through some of the key kind of risk mitigation here, right? What are some of the key things that can go wrong? And create a little process or a little SOP around what to do, right? How do we get content going out? Do we have any promotions coming up? How do we deal with clients? And you can build those things and have them prepared. Again, AI can help tremendously with standardizing this stuff. If you have an idea for, how to standardize some of these problems that could arise while you're gone, ChatGPT can put together something really beautiful, and at least it's a jumping off point you can iterate and improve upon, but at least everyone feels safe knowing that this has been thought about, right? And there's some guardrails there. That's going to make your team feel safe and make them feel more empowered to kind of handle things on their own. And then I think one challenge that I think would be great is to set like a personal boundary for digital detox. So can you set a goal for yourself, which would be, I'm not going to look at my phone between X and X hours, or even better, can I spend full day not looking at the phone? Like, this sort of thing will not only make you more present with people you love, but also will do so much for your mental clarity, and really give you that refresh that you need. But this digital detox cannot happen successfully unless you go through sort of making the preparations before you leave to make sure that you feel like things are handled. Because if not, that could probably just give you more stress, right? So running through these simple things like the brand communication, right? Making sure things can flow without your approval needed, right? Making sure that there's no major leaks in your funnel, that there are leads coming in even while you're gone. Make sure that there's something happening there, right? For when you're away, or that there's no leaks in your marketing flywheel, right? That are going to stop sales and stop revenue coming in. Third is really prepping your team, right? Getting that action plan in place of who's, in charge, who's responsible for what. And last is leadership. Who's taking over that leadership role? And what are some of the risk mitigation procedures, right, that you have put in place to make sure that no one ends up in a bad situation, totally stressed out, trying to find you kind of in a mountain somewhere. So the bigger lesson in all of this, right, and it's sort of what I had talked about at the top of this, is stepping away on vacation is really like a litmus test for how sustainable and scalable your business is. Because your ability to disconnect is directly tied to your ability to scale, right? If you have systems, if all of your business is systemized, stepping away from your business shouldn't be a problem, right? And the other piece of this is you don't earn time off, right? I think we have this mentality of like, oh, we need to earn it. And this is what happened to me a couple of years ago. I just walked away from everything. And I was like, F it. I've just wasted so many summers being stressed out. I can't even tell you times that I've had panic attacks on the beach, watching my kids play in the distance while I'm like interfacing with some thing that caught on fire in the business when I should be enjoying time with my family, right? I thought I earned this. So I walked away from everything without setting up these systems, and I paid the price, right? But I realized you don't earn your time off. You build it. So let's let this summer be the season you stop being the business, right? And that you being the epicenter of the business, and that you start actually leading it. Because stepping into those shoes as leaders, right? And we talked specifically about the marketing department, but this applies to the business as a whole, right? Your ability to be that leader is really the price of really what it takes, kind of that price and what it takes to actually be building a business that has ability to scale and live beyond you, right? So you can go out there and build the life of your dreams. So I hope that this has been interesting for you. I hope that you do put into action some of these suggestions. And if you have any questions, as always, right, I've done this successfully in my own life and be able to, I just feel so grateful for the life I've been able to build. And these summers are now moments that I cherish and just memories that we're building for a lifetime with our family, right? And I feel really present to it. So if you're feeling like that's something that you want and you're not quite sure how to get there, even after listening to this episode, don't hesitate to send me a DM on LinkedIn. That's where I like to hang out. And even if I don't directly respond to you right away during these summer months, I do get to all of these messages eventually. So I will be sure to be checking in with my DMs at least once a week and getting back to any of your questions. Or you'll have my team replying to you, and they know my methodology inside and out. So send your questions to Victoria Hager at LinkedIn. And I hope to see you on next week's episode of the Scalable Marketing Machine podcast. We have tons of really interesting guests in the next couple weeks of episodes that we've recorded previously throughout the year that have just been giving us such great insights on everything from our business finances to automating that lead generation to uncovering what does strategy actually even mean. So there's a lot of really juicy episodes coming up, and I hope you check in on all of them. And I'll see you back here next week for the Scalable Marketing Machine podcast.